YouTube, what is good? So something I've said quite a few times on this YouTube channel is if you want good edits, start with a good photo. That's not what we're doing today. We're starting with some bad photos. I asked y'all to send me your bad photos that you thought I could save with a little bit of editing. We're gonna jump into Lightroom today. I'm gonna go through these images and I'm gonna try to bring them back to life, sprinkle in a little bit of something onto them, and take them from what we think are bad photos and turn them into something that might be useful. This was a lot of fun for me and it was a really good challenge, and I hope you can take everything in today's video, use it as a little bit of inspiration and potentially some insights into what you can do when you get that photo that you know there's some potential to, you know you might be able to make something out of it, but you screwed it up in camera, because we have all been there before. So some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. One, I'm using a preset in today's video for a lot of the edits that is available on my Patreon. It's $4. That's where I put my presets. I only used it in the video because it speeds up the editing process. These are pretty extensive edits because we're taking like a really bad photo and trying to bring it into something else. So that preset helps out. I'll go ahead and link that down below in the description. Also, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up button on today's video. Let's get it to 2,000 thumbs up. And last but not least, thank you to everyone who submitted photos for today's video. I wish I could include all of them, but like I said, because these are considered bad photos, it's more of an editing process, and this video would have been like an hour and a half long if I included everyone's. So thank you to everyone who submitted, and I'll throw everyone's social media handles for the photos we end up using on the screen as they come up. Y'all are the truth. Let's jump into Lightroom and let's edit your bad photos. So this is our first photo on the day, and this is kind of exactly what I had in mind when I was putting this video together. This photo isn't bad. The exposure is a little bit under on it, but you did get the highlights right, which is really what we need for a photo like this. The composition a little bit off, but I do think we can save this photo in post. So the first thing we're going to do is actually go down to our transform right here. We're going to do a vertical transform just to get all these lines straight and make the photo look a little better. We're going to go ahead and crop it down so that we're removing those white pieces on the side, and there we go. I'm going to go ahead and crop it to remove that building over there. Now the second thing we're going to do is drop in the preset I told you all about. Remember, presets are not one size fits all, so we are going to go in and adjust this accordingly. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to warm up this a little bit, actually quite a bit. Let's take it up to right about there. I think that looks good, and bring this up too. So now we got a little bit of a better sunset warm vibe going on. I'm going to drop the contrast on this quite a bit just because I don't think it needs to be this punchy, especially because it's already underexposed. I'm going to go ahead and bring my shadows up quite a bit here. I think right around here looks good. And let's keep our highlights where they're at. Maybe we'll bring them up a little bit. We're about to do something to kind of counterbalance this, so we don't need to do any major adjustments to the highlights. Gonna bring my whites up like normal where they're at, and blacks will keep where they're at as well. For this photo, I'm gonna do something I normally don't do. I'm gonna bring my saturation down just because I think on this image we can go with a more desaturated look and it's gonna look a lot better. I'm gonna bring my vibrance up like I normally do, just a little bit. And now we're gonna go in and we're gonna add in some graduated filters here. Now this is one of the main components of this edit. We're going to do a bunch of them. So the first one I'm going to do is going to be a major one up top. I'm going to bring it down to right about there. Let's check this. And with this one, I'm going to bring the exposure down quite a bit. So we're going to bring our exposure right around there. We're going to bring our highlights down a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and bring our shadows up just to expose some of the buildings. So let's see. I think right around there looks pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and drop another one of these in above it. So right here, now this one is going to be darker, and what this is going to do is basically create kind of like a vignette effect, but we are going to be in control of it just to draw your eye more towards the center of the image. I think that looks solid right there, and we're going to do the exact same thing down at the bottom of the image. So go ahead and drop another one of these in, but this is going to be the opposite. So up top, we were making adjustments to the highlights and really trying to get that sky on point. Down here, we are going to try to get these shadows on point. So what we're going to do is bring our exposure way up. I know a lot of you are probably thinking I'm pushing it with this, and I kind of am, but it's what we got to do. Now we have this really nice reflection down here in the bottom of our image, and we're going to go ahead and drop that down, bring another one of these in to right about there, and with this, I'm going to bring our clarity up. Now, the reason I'm bringing our clarity up is to really make this reflection punch a little bit and add another layer of interest into this particular shot. That looks good. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did up top one more time, creating this kind of cap vignette type effect to our shot. And I'm going to bring the exposure down just a little bit here, right about there, to create some contrast and really draw our eye towards the center of the scene. Now, the next thing we got to do though is we got to go into these truck details, and I'm going to go ahead and paint in this logo right here. So let's see, grab our brush, paint this, and we're going to bring our exposure up on that so the Toyota logo is visible. Right around there is okay. Bring our highlights, actually no highlights on that. We'll bring our shadows up right there, and we'll bring our whites up just a little bit as well. And we'll bring our clarity up just to get that really nice and punchy. Obviously, if we were, being professional here, we would really refine this a little bit. But I think for the sake of today's example, y'all are getting the point. That looks really good. And we're gonna go ahead and drop in a circular filter as well to do the exact same thing. Bring our exposure up just a little bit as well. I think that looks pretty solid. Once again, like I said, if we were doing this as more of a finesse edit, I'd probably spend a little more time on this. But for the sake of today, I'm going to kind of breeze through these things. So that all looks good, but I want to add a little bit more into this. I feel like we can do some stuff with split toning. So let's drop down to our colors and split tone right here. First thing I'm going to do on the split tone, well actually first thing I'm going to do on the colors is I'm going to adjust these yellows a little bit. I'd kind of like these to be a little bit more on the orange side for this particular edit, so we're going to slide this over to right around there, a little bit more on the orange side. I don't want to go too crazy, but I like the way those headlights look when they're more orange. So we'll do that. We're going to bring the saturation down on these a little bit, and we're going to bring our luminance up just a good bit actually, because I really like those to pop out like that. So that looks really good, and we'll bring our luminance on our oranges up a little bit too, because it's going to bring out those lights as well. Now we're going to change up our blues here. We have a lot of blue going on, and I don't think it really adds to the overall feel of this particular shot. So we're going to bring our blue luminance up quite a bit, and we're going to bring our saturation down just a little bit. And now let's jump down to our color grade or our split tone, depending on which Lightroom you're on. For the mid-tones, I think I'm going to leave these alone, but for the shadows, we're going to go... Let's see, I'm not going to do a ton in the shadows, so let's start there and let's spin this thing around and try to find a color that we like. Personally, I'm kind of liking this blue cool effect, so I think that looks pretty good. Let's do the same thing with the highlights here. Let's make a little bit more of a change in the highlights. I want to warm up the highlights quite a bit, so I think I'm going to stay over in this orange area. I think that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and remove this right here. Done. That's a little sloppy, but like I said, if we were going to finesse this edit, we'd spend a little more time on it. And let's reset. I'm liking this one. This looks really, really dope. So I quickly want to interrupt today's video to thank our sponsor, Cuts. You might have noticed that fresh hoodie I was wearing at the beginning of today's video, and you might have noticed some of the t-shirts and hoodies I've been wearing in recent episodes. All of these are provided by Cuts. I'm sure a lot of you are like me and you prefer a simple minimum wardrobe, but often find yourself feeling underdressed or unprofessional. Cuts eliminates all these insecurities for me because of how high quality the materials are on their garments and how well tailored each of them are. So whether it's a corporate happy hour, hanging out with friends, casual Friday, or going to the gym, Cuts allows you to feel confident in something simple like a hoodie or a t-shirt, and that is why I'm so happy to have them as a sponsor on today's video. Go down to the link below and you can check them out, and you can get 15% off your first purchase, and you'll be supporting the channel in the process. So thank you to Cuts for sponsoring today's video. Give them a try. Go to that link down below in the description. So our next example right here is this photo from Toronto. We have the CN Tower, I believe is what this is called. What we're going to do on this one is we're going to once again drop in this preset right here. I don't use this preset every single time, but for the sake of today's video, it's a really nice starting point to just get the edit going with and save some time here. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to bring the contrast down quite a bit on this one. These dark photos like this, I prefer to take some contrast out. I just think it works. I don't know why they submitted this as one of their bad photos. I actually think it's pretty good, but maybe because it was a little underexposed, that is the reasoning for sending it in. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to bring this white balance a little bit over to the cool side here. I'm thinking right around here probably looks pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to leave the tint where it's at. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit more. There we go. Now, I'm going to bring my shadows up quite a bit here. What camera is this made with? We got a Nikon RAW file, so we should be pretty good bringing the shadows up a pretty decent amount. I'm going to keep the highlights basically where they're at. I think that looks good. I'm going to bring my whites up quite a little bit here. That looks cool. And blacks, we're going to keep where they're at and maybe bring them up just a little bit. So let's see, before and after, where are we at? Cool, we are making some progress here. That was pretty much just a correction. So next up, on photos like this where we have some fog, I like to bring the clarity down just because I don't think the image needs an overall super sharpness, especially when the mood of it is kind of this hazy, moody feel. I'm also going to bring our vibrance way up. We got some really good colors here, so do that and bring my saturation up as well. And now we're looking good. So next up, we're going to make some pretty major color adjustments here to add a little bit of flare into this. I'm going to bring our oranges up as far as luminance goes to really brighten up this and brighten up the buildings. So I think that looks pretty cool right there. And we're going to go ahead and just leave the colors alone on that. But I am going to bring my yellows a little more towards the orange side because as you can see, the windows over here are orange and these yellows, I want them to match. So what we're going to do is bring that right around there. That looks pretty good. I'm going to bring the saturation down on this a little bit. And I'm going to bring the luminance down on this as well. We're looking pretty good. We're looking pretty good just like that. Now I'm also going to adjust my blues and my purples. Obviously we have blue and purple in there. As far as blues go, I'm going to bring the luminance up to get that top of the tower popping. And I'm going to bring the saturation up. I think right around there looks good. And I'm going to bring my purple luminance up as well. That looks cool. Let's see, before, after. Oh yeah, really like the way that looks. Kind of balances out the colors, adds in a little bit of pop and punch where we need it. And now we are going to adjust the split tone on this. The split tone is going to be a big adjustment here. We're going to start in our shadows, which is going to be the majority of our image. We are going to add some warmth into the shadows. I'm liking this orange color right here, and I'm liking a pretty heavy amount of saturation. Thinking right in there looks pretty cool. Maybe I'll bring that down just a little bit. I'm liking that. Now we're going to go to our highlights, and I'm going to add in kind of just a little bit of this so we can toggle this on and off. And I think that's looking pretty good. Just a little bit of warmth, nothing too crazy. I personally like the way warm tones look against purple. I know that's a matter of personal preference. Some of you might disagree with that. Now we're going to bring our eye more towards this part of the image, so I'm going to drop in a graduated filter right here, and I'm going to bring this exposure way down. I think right around there looks good. Just this is a part of the image that is unnecessary. It doesn't add anything to the photo. I think it's important to have it there for the perspective. I just don't think it adds anything, so we're going to drop that exposure just to kind of take your eye away from it. And we're going to go ahead and add some exposure up top right here. So what I'm going to do is drop this filter like that. I'm going to bring my exposure up just a little bit here to really get that CN tower popping. Think, well, a little too much. I don't want to add too much grain into our shot. I'm going to bring our contrast down to also bring more of that kind of glow effect up top. And I'm going to bring our blacks down just slightly. Adding in some blacks kind of gives us some control over the contrast in the way that I want. And let's see, I might bring my white balance a little bit to the blue side over here just because it's only going to affect the top of the image and it's going to add some nice blue against this purple. That looks pretty cool to me. And I think we're done. Actually, let's go ahead and add in some loss of clarity here. I don't want to go too crazy, but let's see, how much of this are we affecting? Yeah, by dropping down this clarity, it really adds to this hazy feel. I don't know if I'm going to do this adjustment up top. Let's see. I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and check that. Cool, I think we're looking pretty good here. We'll do a before and after. Before, after. Yeah, I'm loving the way that looks. A pretty simple edit, but it just adds a nice little touch to this photo. And I think this would look great in something like an Instagram story or maybe even something in a photo set on Twitter. Once again, also, if you want to control that noise, we did have to do quite a bit of editing on this. We can jump down to luminance here and you can hit option and you can mask your sharpening to get rid of some sharpness or get rid of some noise as well. So this is our next shot right here. With this one right here, one issue is the fact that the focus is on this plant right here. I think we've all been there before, but that is one of the things kind of negatively impacting this photo is technically our subject is slightly out of focus, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal for the sake of today's example. So we are going to continue on with that same preset from Patreon right here. Go ahead and drop that on there. And now let's make a bunch of adjustments here. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring our exposure down on this because we are overexposed by quite a bit. We are going to bring our contrast down a lot on this one. I'm going to kind of flatten this image out, I think, and I'm going to bring my highlights all the way down. We're going crazy today. -100. I don't think I've ever done that in the history of one of these YouTube videos, but today we are doing it. What camera is this? Looks like a Canon camera, so it seems to be handling this pretty well. So we're going to bring our shadows up a little bit as well, get that dynamic range going, and let's bring our whites down just a little bit here. I think that looks decent, and we'll bring our blacks. We'll keep our blacks where they're at. And I'm going to bring my clarity down just a little bit too. So the reason I'm going to bring my clarity down is it might help us out with the fact that our subject is out of focus. By bringing the clarity down, we might kind of soften up the entire image. And I don't know, it could be a little trick workaround. I don't know how well that's going to work. I'm going to bring our vibrance up on this, but I'm going to bring our saturation down. So I think with this photo, one thing that can add to it quite a bit is if we stylize these colors a little bit. So what I'm going to do is go down to our color adjustments. I have a video on this channel dedicated to how I use these color adjustments the proper way and make sure that I'm not negatively impacting my image. I'll go ahead and link that down below, and we're going to apply all those thoughts into today's video. So the main color I'm going to get rid of is our greens. I'm going to bring these down quite a bit and really get that nice desaturated green look. I think this already adds a little bit of moodiness into this photo. Now, one thing I would have done kind of in production of this is I would have had this flannel be maybe an orange or a yellow color. I think it really would have helped create some contrast into this photo, and that's one of the things that's also holding this back is the fact that we don't really have any separation between our subject and the background. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this a little bit to the yellow side over here, and let's see about the luminance. I'm going to bring the luminance down to try to add that pop into our subject. So as you can see, when I bring the luminance down like that, our subject stands out just a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust his skin tone just a little bit here and bring this over. I think right around there looks good. I think that looks pretty solid. Might bring the saturation down on it just slightly. Gonna go to our blues here, and we have a lot of blue in the background. And once again, I'm gonna go ahead and desaturate this. Bring that right about there. And I'm gonna go ahead and bring the aqua. Do we have any aqua in this? There's just a little bit. I'm going to bring the aqua over to the green side to try to have it blend in more with the greens of our backdrop. And with that, I think we're pretty much good. I'm going to maybe do a little bit on the split tone. I don't really know though. I don't think this image needs much. Maybe I'll add some warmth into our highlights. Yeah, maybe just a little bit right there. Not too much. One last thing you could consider if you really wanted to would be adding in a little bit of vignette here just to draw your eye more to that subject. I don't necessarily think you have to do that, but I think this one is done. It's looking pretty good. That's without the tone curve that's with it, and this is our reset. Yeah. Definitely think we ended up saving this photo. So our next example is this photo right here. I don't know why they submitted this as a bad photo. I personally think it looks completely fine and looks good, but we're gonna treat this one like my old school product photography days when I worked at Epitome ATL. We're gonna try to edit this quick because when it comes to product photography and lifestyle stuff like this, speed is one of the biggest factors. So we're gonna drop in our product photography preset right here. We're gonna add in some contrast, bang. We're gonna bring in some shadows, bang. We're gonna drop down our highlights. Boom, that's looking good. Bang, boom. That's all I'm going to say this entire editing video. We're going to add a little bit of whites in here. We're going to drop down our blacks. I think that's looking pretty nice. I might add in a little bit of saturation. Nah, no saturation. I'm going to bring in some vibrance. Ooh, that is looking fantastic already. I might go ahead and call that done. I think it personally looks great, but if you wanted to, you could drop down into this tone curve right here, and you could add a little bit into the shadows if you wanted to add some warmth. I think that looks really good, and maybe if you want to make this converse really pop, you can add in some blue right there. I think this looks fantastic. Easy buckets edit. Bang, there we go. And our last example right here is this one. This is a massive challenge. Whoever sent me this, you paid attention to the rules because this is indeed a kind of bad photo, and it's not your fault. It just, I have images like this all the time in my Lightroom catalog as well. You were trying something, didn't exactly work, and what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to save it right now. So first thing we're going to do is hit this transform right here. We're going to see which one works. I think vertical will work okay for us. So we got a vertical transform going. I'm going to bring the crop down here. Step number 1, got that out of the way. Step number 2, we are going to go ahead and adjust our white balance a lot. I'm going to bring this over to the warm side. I think that blue is just too blue, and maybe we can make something a little more interesting if we get rid of some of it. I'm going to go ahead and add in some hue right here, a little bit of purple. I'm going to bring my exposure down on this, and you're going to see why in a second. So I'm going to bring the exposure down, bring my shadows up, and I'm going to bring my whites up. I'm going to keep my blacks down. So now I'm trying to decide if I want to add in this tone curve or not. If I paste it in, yeah, I kind of do like the way that looks. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in that tone curve, and I'm going to leave this as is. We're going to go down to our vibrance. I'm going to add quite a bit in here, and I'm going to add in a little bit of saturation. Now, this photo is still looking very rough, but we are going to drop in some graduated filters, and we're going to drop in a split tone. So I'm going to go ahead and do the graduated filter first. I'm going to bring the exposure down on this side to get rid of that disgusting like sign or whatever it is over there. I don't really know what that is, and you could probably remove it in Photoshop, but for the sake of today's speed edit, I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. Going to adjust this crop just slightly. There we go. Now I'm going to add in another graduated filter at the top of this photo, and with this one I'm just going to adjust our white balance a little bit up here. Let's see. Bring this over to the warm side just slightly. I'm going to bring this over to the purple side just slightly. We're trying to add in some colors and some stuff going on up top. Go ahead and leave that alone now. And we're going to drop in a circle filter. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the invert button on this mask. I'm going to bring the exposure way up right here. Thinking right around there. Going to bring my shadows up. Now this doesn't look very natural, but it's just one of these things where I got to do it this way. I'm going to bring this up a little bit here. Maybe I'll bring this over just slightly. That sign is starting to come back, but it's not as noticeable. All right, we'll leave that like that. Let's drop down here and add in a little bit of vignette to counterbalance what we just did. That's looking good. Now let's go into our split tone. Actually, one thing we're going to do, we're going to try to get these subjects to pop out just a little bit more by painting in their faces and their masks. There we go, there we go, there we go. Add in some exposure. All right, cool. Now your eye might be drawn to the bottom of this photo. I'm going to drop the clarity just slightly. I'm going to go ahead and add in some noise reduction here. Let's see, going to add in quite a bit of luminance. I'm going to hit the Option key on my mask. There we go. Sorry, the computer fan is kicking on. Once again, we're cooking with jet fuel over here, so the computer has got to handle it. Let's see, what else do I want to do to this one? I definitely want to add some type of split tone in, some type of color grade. So what I'm going to do is add some warmth to my highlights. I think something like that looks kind of cool. Oh, I'm liking that greenish look. Kind of like the way that looks. I'm going to go ahead and bring this down quite a bit. Toggle this on and off. All right, yeah, that's kind of cool. Adding in a little bit of something. Maybe we can add in something to the mid-tones, maybe a little bit of warmth here. All right, that's kind of cool. On to something. I'm going to bring this down actually because I don't like how intense it is. I'm going to bring down the highlight one as well. Going to move the blending a little bit over this way. So the last thing I'm going to do here is add a little bit of luminance into the blue. It's just going to brighten up the middle of that photo. Going to add in a little bit of saturation on that blue as well. Kind of a very small adjustment, but it's definitely there. And I think I might change this split tone just a little bit. I don't like how green it is, so I'm going to move these highlights a little bit over this way. Does kind of give this a little bit more of a cinematic feel, but you could probably actually get away with no color grade on this. It's a matter of personal preference. If you want to have more of like the cinematic kind of like Monaris look that I was talking about earlier, you can go with something like this, or you can go ahead and get rid of it. I think I'm actually going to keep it off, me personally. And I think this one is done. So this is the before and this is the after. Honestly, I'll take it. You know, if we're trying to save this photo and bring it back from this, I'm not gonna lie, I think I did an okay job. We can probably jump into Lightroom, or excuse me, we could jump into Photoshop and we could remove this if we needed to as well. So there we go, that is it. We took some bad photos, we brought them back to life, and I think we did a pretty good job today of making something out of some situations that were less than ideal. We've all been there before. I know I've been there a million times where you make a photo and think, yo, there was something here, and I just ruined it because I got it wrong in camera. I didn't get my settings right, but luckily with raw files and with editing, it's a little bit easier for you to bring some life back in your photo and potentially save your mistake. But like I always say, it works out a lot better if you get the exposure and your settings right in camera from the jump. Y'all are the truth. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe for more. I will catch y'all next time.